everybody. Welcome back and welcome to 2021. I hope everybody had a very safe, healthy, and Merry Christmas and enjoyed the Christmas season. This is, as I hope you guys are familiar with now, the WWTF podcast, where a group of people, everyday people, get together to discuss topics and passages from the Bible and how they relate to our modern day life today. So my name is Evan. I'm joined as usual by Jesse, Dave, and Laurel, and we're also joined by our interim pastor, Tom, again. So thank you for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
We are following up last episode prior to Christmas. We were discussing part of a video from the Advent Conspiracy talking about giving more and spending less. And so today's episode, we were going to be talking about worshiping fully and loving all, and kind of how we see that as, modern day Christians and our experiences so far with our individual Christian journeys, to see how that fits in today. Talk about worshiping fully and, multiple aspects of what that can mean, whether you're thinking, for me, initially off the bat, thinking off of, worship services and all the different components of that. But also, I think from some of our other discussions, even amongst this episode, or other times we've talked, is, does worshiping God and Jesus, does that necessarily mean sitting your butt in a pew every Sunday, versus is more true or full worshiping some of these the various service things we've talked about, or when we had Tess on for the last episode, talking about just going through your everyday life and how you interact and treat people along your way. Is that more the fully worshiping part?
Yeah, I when I think about worship service on Christmas, frankly, we think about Creasters to some degree. You know what Creasters are, right? Christmas and Easter, people come to church, and other times of the year they don't really come to church. And so this idea of Christmas service has always been a cool thing for me. I grew up a Catholic, so midnight mass was a big deal for me. And then, as I moved on to other churches, that Christmas service was a cool piece. But this year, of course, it's been a little more difficult, to gather together. And so, if you think back to the time of when, the Christmas story happened, are we really talking about worship in the sitting in the pews, as you mentioned, butts in the pews kind of thing? Or was it really this like experiential thing that you had in your heart, that you kind of this idea of what Mary was going through, or Joseph was going through, or what was going on, with everyone at the time, and compared to what we do now with just going to that service.
I think the value of going to service is that sometimes I need, if I'm just thinking my own thoughts, I can either end up going easy. Sometimes I need to hear stuff I don't want to hear, or to hear things in a way that challenges me, because I can lie to myself very easily, instead of taking that honest, hard look. And so it's not an either or. I mean, I certainly, I'm not a fire and brimstone kind of guy, but I think part of worship is being open and vulnerable to the light of God coming in and exposing too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Tom, I think you're saying like part of worshiping is then being open to learning new things and hearing new things, even if they might be hard to hear, I guess. I think is kind of what you were saying. But
it's more that it's
right?
like receiving them, you know. Just sometimes like when you're dirty and you need a shower, and man, it feels good to get all the crud washed off. Sometimes I need that experientially. Not that I'm going to take a shower in the middle of church, but that would get people's attention, I suppose.
Yeah, so I feel that way sometimes when I'm just sitting in a pew, and this is not Christmas related necessarily, but more like on a regular Sunday where I've just had a rough week, and frankly, I just need a little bit of rejuvenation, and I'm kind of like open and exposed, kind of to hear how I can better my life, but more how God's gift is out there, and that's a great feeling that I get in the pew every once in a while. I guess my issue in Christmas, I guess, is I got a little bit of that from, we'll call it COVID Christmas, if you will. This idea of loving our families a little closer, and kind of hanging out in a more, and not going to a big Christmas service. I got something out of that I didn't think I would necessarily get. I thought I'd miss a lot, and I did miss that piece of it. But in general, it was really about loving my family, and so that was even hard to do. But so I guess in a Christmas way, I don't know that I think it was better or worse. A COVID Christmas still was Christmas, I guess, is what I would say.
Early on, I talked about that we have a 10 a.m. self and a 2 a.m. self. The 10 a.m. self that we present to the world, and the 2 a.m. self of our hopes and fears and dreams. And, I've said that I try to figure out, how do I speak to that 2 a.m. person in all of us? And I think that's kind of what you were describing, that sometimes you go to church and that 2 a.m. person is front and center, even though nobody else around you can see that. But sometimes you go aware of that need, and Christmas, sometimes you have that, but for a lot of us, especially if we've been in the faith a long time, Christmas is just nice.
So we were talking through, Christmas and having the chance to come in, be vulnerable to hear kind of God's word. But how between services, like our worship services and other things that we may do throughout just our everyday lives, how would we, or how would you guys describe what worshiping fully means to you in today's era?
Okay, so I have a confession. This won't come as that much of a surprise. There are times where I'm sitting in church in a service, and I'm not all there, right? Well, I'm not all there. I'm kind of thinking about whatever. We're all doing this a little bit, and so to me, when I think of worship fully, it's being fully there. Really, truly, kind of being involved or being completely there, and that doesn't happen always, because we're always busy and our brains are spinning around. And so I think that's when I think about worship fully during the Christmas season, this idea of that is important. It's this idea of truly remembering what this season is really all about, as opposed to just kind of going to church and and I think as Tom said, it's been a great tradition for me for a long, long time to go to Christmas service. That's been great. I didn't do that this year, and I realized that maybe it's not just the service, but it's being fully engaged all the time in the Christmas season.
And what about for the non-Christmas season? So just through the rest of the year, all 360 some other days.
Forget that.
Haven't done Advent through the eyes of Mary. Just her initial response of, here am I, your servant. May it be with me according to your word, is kind of a nice mantra, or just something to be mindful of in all your encounters, or all of our encounters. How might I be used in this situation, whatever it might be?
To me, I think kind of like everybody has their own little style of worship. It can be worshiping fully in the sanctuary and being in church on Sunday and listening and thinking about things right then and there. Or it could be like we have to do right now, sitting at home by yourself on a computer, watching it live or something. It could be just sitting at home reading your own Bible verses, or just sitting there meditating or something. I mean, or even just going out and serving others. I mean, some people can see them worshiping Jesus and our Savior and everything by being out and being at a men's shelter at a time and being a servant, which is what Jesus was technically and everything to us. So he was serving us and serving his people, and so people see worshiping as going out and serving others.
Yeah, from our last week's conversation, last conversation a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that. This idea of giving, and give more and spend less. And so we actually did some work around that and worked down at Redeemer for a little bit. And honestly, my sister is really going through some struggling times right now, and she wants to move completely away from gifts, and she wants to move completely away from just the normal Christmas, let's decorate everything, and just that American Christmas, I'll call it. And she really wants to move into a completely different scenario. And so she came with us to go down to Redeemer Crisis Center, and then she spent other times, and she is searching now for completely changing her Christmas for the rest of her life to really turn into this just completely service-oriented thing. And that's her way to worship, I would say. And it's her way to kind of celebrate the season. And I think we talked last time a little bit about, can we get that to kind of carry over after Christmas and be that who we are the rest of our lives kind of thing. And we all try to do that, I'm sure, a little bit, but she's really, I mean, I have never seen so one of my sisters that does this already a little bit, but this one is just dedicated. She's been always the Christmas person, makes Christmas perfect every year. And she really wants to completely change to a completely service-oriented Christmas. So, which I think is, it's completely crazy for me to think of my sister making that complete change this year. By the way, it had nothing to do with my podcast here, but I'm sure other people might because of our podcast. So,
does she have a family?
Yeah, she has a daughter and a son-in-law, and she doesn't, she stays with them. She goes to their house for Christmas, but she kind of wants to kind of tell her family that I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. And we talked about that last week, about how hard would it be for all of us to tell our families, we don't want to do this anymore. Instead, we want to do this other thing. And how hard that would be. And she's doing it. which is a little scary.
But why does everything have to be so polarized?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because we treat this just like everything else. Because I love watching the big incense boat go flying on Christmas Eve at midnight mass. You know, I mean, there's something transcendent in that. And going to Redeemer Crisis Center, there's something transcendent in that. You know, and one doesn't negate the other. I think if you're OCD about, you know, thinking that you make Christmas when no, you know, the pastor in his Christmas message this year talked about that we don't make Christmas, God does. And I think you can express that. And
Yeah.
it just seems unfair to do unilaterally. You know,
Yeah.
the drill sergeant has always done it this way, and now all of a sudden we're going to do a 180. You know, that seems
Yeah. And I think,
undiplomatic.
yeah, I think in her case,
Yeah,
she still is interested in the church piece of the Christmas. She's kind of not interested in I want to make my house look perfect.
Yeah.
I want to have the perfect gift for everyone. And instead, and the perfect meal and you know, all the things perfect. And instead it's going to be, for her, it was more about, I want to do this other thing. And I guarantee, I'm sure she went to midnight mass because she still is a Catholic, because we grew up together, obviously.
Yeah.
And so she still did that part, but it was this other part where she used to spend a lot of time decorating the house and making all the right presents and doing all the right cooking and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the piece that she kind of wants to move away from.
The
But
commercial.
that's got nothing to do with Christmas.
Right. I think
mean,
she's figuring that. I think we're all figuring that out.
But I'm saying that she did that for her pride or for her, you know, whatever. That was a need in her that had nothing to do with Christmas.
She's my older sister, so think about that. It took me this long to figure it out.
Figure that out,
It's taken her even longer.
You know, because I know people that put out, you know, 60 different manger scenes, and they've got a story, meaningful story about each one. You know, so I guess it's why you do it more than, you know, and it sounds like for her it became work instead of joy and pleasure. And
as I say, I think what you're saying about like traditions, it doesn't have to be all or nothing or opposite or whatever, but you can choose what to do depending on what means something to you or brings you joy or has meaning about the true meaning, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and we could invite one another to do things. You know, if you know, I didn't you say that y'all used to do the Thanksgiving thing? You would go serve a meal somewhere and then have Thanksgiving with your family. I mean, you can do, and then you could invite somebody to go to church with you. You know, you can. This is something. This is a way I found to celebrate Christmas. Would you like to join me? And then, you know, what's something that you all like? And I guess since the election, I'm feeling all unity and, you know, peace and coming together. It's just raining down like a flood.
So we're talking about worship fully, but what does love more mean, really, Evan? I mean, is that like
No, it's love all.
Love all?
Yeah.
Is that the other theme?
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I feel like that plays into, you know, as we started off, we were discussing the various different verses, and me, if there's something that's difficult or something that we're wrestling with, I always kind of boil it down to that singular message of love, that we get from Jesus and from God. And for love all, I feel like with some people there it can, I mean, I've heard with some services I've been to at other churches where it can be, love of everybody except for blank. And I've certainly, heard that a few times. I think we talked about this in an earlier episode where it's just that going back to loving without exception. And, and love can mean, a lot of different things, in different contexts. So it could be kind of going back to what Tessa was talking about just throughout your everyday life of if you just see somebody at the corner and, even just acknowledging that other person as you're on your kind of daily routine, or especially here in Cleveland, a couple of the exit ramps from the highway for me to get home, there's almost always a homeless person there. And it's, if you're able to give a few bucks, or if you stop by and give them, a meal or a coat or something, that a lot of those different things can be that love. And I feel like it happens with a lot of us, and I know I'm guilty of it from time to time, is when you do see, like in that instance of the homeless person at the corner, a lot of people will just, kind of put the blinders on and try not to think about it and feel guilty. And it's okay, well, what can we do to improve that and show God's love through us to all of our various interactions with other people?
Yeah, we were downtown. Speaking of a Christmas theme, we were downtown watching the lights last night. We went down to downtown and kind of walked through Public Square and that kind of thing. And we ran across someone who asked for money. And my son asked, I feel like I should carry cash on me just to give to people like that. And how do I draw the line of doing so? So my son once actually went and bought him a pizza and came back and gave the pizza to the person, which worked out really well. And at the time he did, and the person was really happy about it. But he kind of felt a little odd about just handing the person cash, because again, this idea of, are you promoting, something that's not really helping the person versus helping them actually get something to eat. And so actually we walked by the person, and it turned out that we didn't connect with them, but that conversation came up again in the car on the way home about what do you do about folks. And it doesn't mean that we don't love that person. It doesn't mean we don't care about that person, but how do we figure that out? And how hard is that? And what does expressing your love really mean?
Is it, I mean, what we're talking about sounds more like kindness than love. Because, like love in your marriage isn't always kind. It doesn't always feel good and wonderful. You know what I mean? Love is kind of more of a dynamic word than being kind to people, being generous, being mindful.
Yeah, I guess I would call it caring, right?
Caring.
Just love and caring for others.
Yeah.
And so there is a dilemma there, right? Of how to help, right? And sometimes it's hard to figure out where that line is. And ironically, I paid $10 to park to go around for an hour to look at the lights. Arguably, I could have paid the guy $10 to watch my car and make sure it was okay, and then drive my car away, and he would have made $10. But
didn't think of that.
No, probably a better choice. But
I heard one about that we're to love our neighbor the way, not the way that they want to be loved, not the way that we want to love them, but what would God want for them? How would God want this person loved? And you're talking about who do you give money to and how? And if you're concerned about what it's going to be used for, what is the most loving thing to do there? Is it to give them money, or is it to, if they're going to use it for, and how do you figure that out? How would God have this person served? Because I've given people money to go away, because I didn't want to talk to them. And that wasn't very loving, although on the surface it appeared to be.
The Advent conspiracy, I just re-looked at it a little bit, and for this part, love all, it said something about loving all people in the radical way that like Jesus did, something like that. So, and that's kind of just saying, Tom, like, okay, when you're thinking of someone, how would God or Jesus be loving them? Yeah, can we figure that out? Like, what should we do with these people that we see?
Well, I mean, Jesus, like when Jesus chased the money changers out,
Yeah.
he loved them. When he was calling the Pharisees snakes and whitewashed tombs and an evil and adulterous generation, he was saying that out of love. It wasn't out of, and so it's not just let's all feel good, the Barney church or whatever, where we all just are happy and love each other and we're hippies, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, tough love is love too, I guess.
Yeah.
And the kindness, I think that distinction you made between kindness and love is something we should think about, because I got to tell you, sometimes it's, I feel like I genuinely love other people. I don't have a lot of space in my life to hate people. It's just not something it's something I've learned to not do anymore. And early on in my life, I hold grudges and whatever, and I've just tried to block that out. And but showing surface-oriented kindness is not the same as love. And so, I may feel, so what does love everyone, love all really mean? In the Christmas kind of idea, this idea of this Advent conspiracy. I mean, are we saying that we need to make sure that everyone around us, we are never holding a grudge against, we're never treating less than ourselves? I mean, I don't know what exactly it means around Christmas, I guess is what I would say, versus the rest of our lives.
Well, certainly holding ourselves accountable is a wonderful thing. Yeah, that I am not going to hold grudges, partly because I don't want that ugliness within my own heart, and it's not doing my neighbor any good either, and so, that's kind of the attitude you think that you would be bringing to it.
I feel like trying to separate kindness and love, and the tough love, that we were talking about. At least some of the initial thoughts for me is, the kindness being okay, either giving the $10 or the pizza or whatever to someone in need, versus, and that being the surface level kindness, versus more the love of helping to guide them, or guide or teach them along a way that could potentially help them out, down the road, kind of thing. I mean, again, I don't know if that's slightly off from what we were discussing, but an initial thought.
Give the man a fish, or teach them how to fish. Yeah. Right? That's saying, that's kind of what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. I just didn't have the words for it.
So how can we do that? to someone, we might ask us for money on the side of the road. I've thought, I don't know.
So, okay, so I'm going way out of my area of expertise here, and here we go. So, in biblical times, okay, we have a couple of examples of that. One we have the, obviously the Good Samaritan story. But my suggestion is the Christmas story is a little further out than just about Jesus's birth, and this idea of, and just, this past Sunday there was some discussion about Simeon and this idea of Simeon, I think that was his name, and the idea of this was not a gift to the Jews, right? It was a gift to the Gentiles who were outside. This love all thing was, don't just love people who are in your circle, right? Not your circle in COVID. It's a smaller circle, right? The bigger circle. All right. And so this idea of loving people outside of your circle, this loving other people that don't think like you, that don't act like you, that or whatever. This message of Jesus's birth is not about just saving the people who deserve to be saved, or the people who, in this case, the Jewish people, but in the larger sense, even today, of people who currently believe. It's this message of loving everyone, and this message of love for everyone who's willing to walk into his arms, kind of thing, and this idea of loving everyone. So I'm way past my area of expertise on that. Luckily, we have Tom here to, but that's my vision of what I hear in the Christmas story. That I think
where were you going way out on a limb?
Well, I don't, I'm not one to quote biblical precedent of like timeline, and that's what the biblical story means to me.
Didn't sound crazy to me.
Well, good. I feel so much better.
Well, whether you should or not, I don't know, but
well, there's at least two of us who think that's it.
Yeah.
What about for you, Jesse?
I don't know, I got kind of a little bit stumped with the taking love and kindness a little bit and everything. So, because going a little bit away from the Christmas and everything, but like at school at one point, I think it was during like the one presidential election where, I mean, it was tons of, kind of what it is today and everything, hate towards a lot of, towards each other, with the race, with all kinds of things going on and everything. And I'm one that kind of go out and I make friends with a lot of, like, anybody and everybody, I feel like, and I'm not one to hate on people or anything like that. So we kind of came up with a slogan a little bit at one point of ELE, everybody love everybody. And we just kind of like stuck with it for the most part, just my friends and everything at school. And we kind of, I don't know, we always kind of took everybody under our wings if we needed to. If somebody was feeling a little down or something, we would always be able to go walk up to that table at the cafeteria or whatever and just kind of sit down and talk with somebody. Or we kind of at one time played a game or whatever. Hey, go sit with as many people as you can and get somebody's name or kind of find out a story from them, find out somebody's favorite color. I mean, just taking that little bit of time to go out, reach out to other people. And I feel like it just kind of connected a little bit of, hey, there's somebody out there that wanted to come meet me, that's a little bit, some like happiness that may have came into somebody's life a little bit of, show a little bit of love to them and everything. So, but like I said, I got a little distraught with the kindness and then the love portion of it and everything. So,
ELE.
everybody love everybody.
We could learn a lot from that. I think that's a great
I like
one.
it. ELE.
But like I said, I mean, it was during a time of like, I mean, an election going on and everything, and so you could tell what doorways were this side and what doorways were this side, and then there were just the rest of us that were saying like, no matter what happens, everybody's got to come together as a nation regardless to figure out the best situations and everything. So
Mm.
you gotta, as much as you might hate that section or hate that idea, you gotta go along and learn to love it and take the best thing from it and kind of roll with it.
I might have to put that underneath my email signature, dedicated to ELE, and have people ask me what that means.
There you go.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioning everything that's going on that's causing a lot of division, especially right now. I've certainly have my viewpoints on things, and when I've been around people that are very much against some of those, that in my eyes, again, adding that human touch for better or for worse, is kind of against some of the stuff that we talk about in the Bible, and kind of loving all is holding my tongue, and kind of brings me back to one of those things like my parents taught me raising up, was if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. And trying to bring that around to loving everybody, and the love versus kindness, and some of the previous episodes of the lesson on the one lone sheep that had wandered off, kind of thing, is your actions or words we should be trying to focus on doing things in a way that lift others up and help to guide people in as best of closer to the right direction, as much as we can, or much as we may be able to.
Yeah, I think there was a sermon a few weeks ago about part of that, what everyone was saying, right? If we think before we speak, is it kind? Is it true? And is it
necessary?
Yeah,
Necessary.
Necessary.
Well, how do we disagree with one another? How do we fight? How do we compromise? Because now if we do it, we're being unloving. If I say something that you find you disagree with, you're not going to argue with me. You're going to go after my motives and intentions, and say I'm not being loving. But so how in the context of ELE, how do you do that, especially in a world where individual autonomy and being yourself, you're going to run into conflict that way. So how do you disagree with one another and navigate that in our society?
Yeah, that's a great point compared to, it kind of is the same with kindness and love, right? This idea of surface-oriented kindness versus love, right? And it's the same with when you're talking to someone, it's not always going to be pleasant. Like, you may not always agree. And so do you just avoid it and just, well, it's okay, believe everyone, or can you meaningfully have a conversation where you truly love each other and are having a meaningful conversation where you may not agree in a more deeper way?
That's when you really find out what love is, at least in a relationship. Are you able to have those and at least come to a point of saying, oh, I see how you could how you could believe that way. If we could just get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that Laurel and I get to that point sometime in our relationship. I'm not sure if we're going to get there, but
Well, you're wrong most of the time, and if you just
Right.
acknowledge that, life is good.
that's what I figured out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
With talking about, having the disagreements, and I feel like we're, like you were saying, Pastor Tom, of nowadays, we may have disagreements and it come across as unloving, is because I feel like so much nowadays people are trying to say, oh, my way is right. They're very, people tend to be very closed minded and aren't open to that discussion, and it makes me think of oh wow, last year already, with the adult interact class, when we watched that documentary. Camilla Khan, I think was her name. Was the name of the person that did that? I don't remember the name of the documentary itself.
The white right?
Yeah, White Right or something like
Yeah.
that. Where to me, that's that way of, if you have the opposing opinions, is being able to calmly sit down and talk and truly get to know one another. Where in today's society, I feel like a lot of times people don't try to understand the other side, which is what's causing all the conflict, versus taking the time to sit and talk through so that you understand both sides, or each person understands the other side, to be able to come and have that understanding, to be able to connect and find that way to love one another, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're saying that's kind of the goal, is to try to listen and understand and be respectful, even though you may not agree.
And
Yes.
through the conversations may drive, either people to change their opinion, as we saw in the documentary, where she's sitting in and talking to leaders of like the KKK, and that a lot of some of those opinions come, and a lot of hate tends to come from fear of one sort or the other. And the fact that once they had the time to sit and talk to her, changed their perspectives, and they ended up almost basically doing a 180 from where they had been. So yeah, having that conversation, to be able to open up and either change mind, whether it changes minds, if that's that's what comes of it, or being able to find that path forward that truly is, following that ELE kind of mindset guidelines, whatever you want to call it.
So it's a new year, and we've got a little bit left to go with COVID, but love all is really a something that we can all help with, right? Everyone can help with this idea of listening thoroughly to people and genuinely caring about what other people think, as opposed to some random thing you read on Facebook. And the ELE philosophy, which I think we're all going to have to get little shirts that say ELE, Jesse. I think that's what we're going to have to go with. But how do we love all going into this new year, and in a practical way? Because again, we can talk about it all we want, and we can get together and do our podcast about it. But how do we practically do that in the world?
Well, I know at Prince of Peace you got a liberal service and a conservative service, so you could get folks to sit down and talk to each other. I can't think of anything more practical and to the point than that. Just saying.
That's a good step.
I was gonna say, I certainly noticed some of those differences as we were having our discussions for our pastoral search.
I bet.
Yeah. And so that's starting, within Prince of Peace is having that conversation internally, but for outside of our congregation, or if we have people listening that don't attend Prince of Peace or wherever they may be, what's something that anyone, no matter if they're a part of a church, what church they're a part of, whether they're not, what's something that anyone could do kind of in their day-to-day lives to try and reach that love all point.
Well, find the person that you disagree with and go at them with 2 ears and 1 mouth.
So how do we as a community do that in a organized way? Is there something we should do in some organized way to have a kind of open discussion with people? Not just necessarily with one person, but to expand that in like exponentially.
One of the real challenges in doing that is usually there's an agenda by whoever the host is. And it's either going to be you're going to convert the KKK into singing Kumbaya, or you're going to, fix some liberal who's, what I'm just saying, because I've sat through church meetings for years and years that were supposed to be dialogues, and they were as partisan as anything that you've ever seen.
So like with everything else, it's all one-on-one. It's person by person.
Well, I think the thing I said about Prince of Peace, it's not a hidden comment that people of certain political persuasions gravitate to one service and others to another service. And before you go out and try to do that with the world, maybe try it amongst yourselves, because that would be a great place. I've read Facebook posts of people, from Prince of Peace. And so you have people with very strong opinions that don't seem very open to other people's opinions. So, physician, heal thyself, or whatever that one is. But you know what I mean? We don't even do it. We want to go out and change the world, and we don't even know how to deal with stuff in our own congregations.
So could a starting point be, finding someone, for us within Prince of Peace, or for anyone else, where find someone close to home, so to speak, that has a differing opinion from you on whatever matter it may be. And, obviously an obvious one right now is everything that has been going on with regards to politics. But trying to take the time to sit down with them one-on-one and simply start with talking through why they think the way they do on certain topics, to get the understanding of kind of where they come from and why they believe in what they believe, as a starting point.
Yeah, and going in with the attitude of, I'm not here to change your mind. As I say, I've got one liberal friend that finally took me up on it, and he and I meet when we can, and most of the time we best get to is, I understand how you can think that way, but we know each other's heart and know each other's intentions. We've known each other for 40 years, so we can do that. But that I'm not here to change your mind, but let's see if we can at least understand how we came to the, believe as we believe. How do you make it a dialogue or a learning and not an argument? Because it seems like we get to arguments so quick when we're doing political stuff.
Or do you start with something that's not political to get that kind of rapport with them and then be able to lead that into something else?
Yeah, certainly baby steps.
Well, I might go a completely different direction and say, why don't we deal with loneliness? There's a lot of loneliness out in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of COVID. I mean, there already was, it just accented because of COVID-19, but there's a lot of lonely people in the world. People who feel unloved, feel on like they're not connected with anyone. And, as Christians, isn't that a thing that we should be battling against? This idea that you're not unloved. And how do we do that? And frankly, who cares what political persuasion they have? And frankly, in the big picture, I don't. That is minuscule compared to whether you feel loved by the world, by others, by people around you. And so, I mean, why not just start with loneliness and really help people who feel unloved? And start there. And they don't, and honestly, they probably don't care. If they felt loved by you, they could care less what political party you were interested in or anything else. They just be happy to be loved.
But it's not about politics. See, it's about, we divide ourselves into a 9 o'clock and an 11 o'clock service based on our views. So, we need to get past that, where we can just say, oh, I understand how you can think that way. So we can get to what really matters is, how you dealing with that, whatever issue, how we can love one another, bear one another's burdens. But until you learn that you can go to the same service together, and it'll be okay. I mean, why do you have 7,900, however many denominations there are? Because we haven't learned to just be able to be with one another, with Jesus as the ultimate thing. Because, Jesus is bigger than any temporal.
Yeah,
politician.
I guess my point there is that everyone at Prince of Peace feels loved in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people in the world that don't have that.
Don't. Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's where we should start, with the people in the world that don't even have that. And so I guess when I think about the Christmas message, I think about that feeling of, people in the world that need that feeling of I'm loved. And that's the message of Christmas in my eyes. And this idea of love all is that peace. And so I guess, not that I don't love our congregation and everyone in it and would love to cement things better, but my suggestion is our congregation is well off, and we're a little disjointed and messed up like every family is. But my suggestion is there are people in the world that are just truly lonely, not, and again, accented by COVID, but just really need our help. And my suggestion is I'd rather reach out to them than reach out to my person who goes to another service that I would like to understand more. Those are also good things, but my suggestion is the bigger need might be people who are kind of like living alone, if you will.
In terms of the church functioning as a body, if you can't make it through a council meeting without getting in a fight with people, and I'm being serious as can be. I mean, you're talking about kindness, simple courtesy. And I want to go out. You're right. But until you get the foundation down, that we know how to treat each other as with some level of respect. Because what you're doing, you don't need the church to do. I mean, all of us can think of somebody in our neighborhood who we could reach out to. But if you're trying to do something corporately as a body, you at least want to have the dynamics of we can get along with each other. Because I wasn't trying to argue with you. I mean, the ultimate goal of the church is how do we seek out the least and the lost in all that we do? How do we be Jesus to them? Yeah. But to do it in the church, you got to be that to each other first.
All right. So what do we want our, I don't know, call to action or the homework be for between now and the next episode for us and for everybody listening? Do we want to have it start with, those people within our circles already to build up a foundation to be able to spread that love easier to others? Or
Well, I would suggest that we hope people have had the opportunity to worship fuller as a result of COVID, because you've had the opportunity to kind of be closer with your families and closer with, maybe the true meaning of Christmas, maybe in this opportunity. But then the second part, I would say, is the marching orders for 2020 or 2021, if you will, is how do we find a way to love all and reach out to people?
And how about we spend until we meet again being mindful of asking ourselves before we speak, is it true, is it kind, is it necessary? And let that be the little good angel whispering in our ear to remember that before we speak.
okay.
I find it makes me very quiet in many settings, not this one, but many.
Right. And I want a logo T-shirt that says ELE on it.
Okay, you got your man there. He'll be on that one.
And then I think too, like you said, the 2 ears and 1 mouth. I try to think that, I don't know that I follow it, but I try to think it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, just if you have, you're not aware of it, but if you start thinking about it, I think it just, I could be a Trappist monk most weeks if I didn't speak.
Okay, Evan, you got all that? You're gonna give us a wrap up?
So basically our marching orders as we kick off 2021, being as you go about interacting with others, especially those with differing opinions, remember that as you have any discussions with them, to be mindful of what you say and how you interact with those people. Make sure what you're saying is kind, mindful, and necessary. That is it benefiting them and others around you. And go to maybe take on that slogan of everybody loves everyone love everyone, and keep that in mind as you go throughout and try to be kind and caring to others to make this a better place for everyone as we work to try and make this make this the world that God wanted it and created it to be. Yeah. So those are the marching orders as we go in and start off the new year. Thanks again, Pastor Tom, for joining us. Mm-hmm. While you described it as a bit of a wet blanket at times, I think it just is that extra point to help us wrestle more with these various topics and questions. So thank you everybody for listening. If you got thoughts on, how anyone can reach out and show that love and kindness to others, or you have other thoughts on what we've discussed, be sure to leave a comment in the comment sections of the YouTube video, or find us through, the various social medias at Prince of Peace Church in Westlake, Ohio, and let us know what your thoughts are. We enjoy hearing from other people. And when we get those, we like to take that into account as we go through each of our journeys. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to a great 2021 with everybody.